Welcome to the MR2 Technology Leadership Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the minds of today's top technology leaders to inspire the innovators of tomorrow. I'm your host, James Gambill. Whether you're an aspiring engineer, a future CTO, or just passionate about the impact of technology, this is your backstage pass to the stories and strategies shaping the future. And today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Craig Richardville, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. It's extremely nice to meet you, Craig. I appreciate you taking the time to kind of sit and chat with us and chat with me. Much appreciated. This kind of what we are talking about earlier. You know, we're trying to motivate people to get into the field of technology. And so there's a lot of listeners that we have out there that are looking to get into the field and maybe not really sure the path to take or what to do in technology or even kind of where to start. There's so many different paths you can possibly take now. How did you start your field of technology to where you're current in position today, and how'd you get into the field of tech?
Yeah, James, there are a variety of different ways of how to get into it. And I got it really by chance. And so when I was going to school in college, I took a couple of coding classes. I really enjoyed the objectivity of coding and producing some kind of output. And that got me kind of into the technology piece. And so I got my degree in computer systems. And then I started with Marathon Oil Company, which is based out of Findlay, Ohio. And I had to do a lot of travel with Marathon, and being kind of the first generation in my family to have a degree. My mother was pushing me to get my a master's degree, and so as I was trying to get a master's degree, I was flying a lot with Marathon, usually out west, going to our crude oil offices, and so I had to keep dropping my classes. So it was like, in order for me to get that degree, I really need to go to a place that's a little more local and doesn't have to travel. That's what got me into the healthcare side of IT. So I went to ProMedica Health System. And I started at ProMedica Health System, and we put in one of the first EMRs in the country. It was a system called the Help System by 3M. And it was one that we put in back almost 35 years ago. So it's been a long time. And they started seeing the digitizing of data and experiences within healthcare, starting back years ago. And then once I started getting into the technology part at ProMedica, the health system, I really enjoyed it. And so I stayed there for 11 years. I grew up to be the vice president of IS. And so all of the technology pieces for ProMedica reported into me. But they were looking for a CIO. And back then, the CIO was kind of a new role within the healthcare entity. And so we actually hired a gentleman named Dave Selman, super guy. And so Dave came in out of Centera, and prior to that, he was at the University of Michigan, and I worked for Dave for a couple of years. And then our CFO, one of my mentors, Jim Mackey, he wanted to start a for-profit entity. So he took three of his leaders, myself being one of them, and two other guys, and they started a company called Vanguard Ventures. And that was a for-profit entity within a non-for-profit healthcare system. So we put our physician practices, we put our health plan, we put our ancillary services all within Vanguard Ventures. And then we sold those services back to other providers, not only ProMedica, but others up into the University of Michigan, over to Cleveland, to Cleveland Clinic, down to Columbus. And we sold those services back out. That was something that was very innovative back then from a business perspective. Then I wanted to get back into IT full time. I really kind of missed it. So I did some IT there, but it really wasn't the role. And I wanted to develop myself into a CIO, and I learned a lot from Dave. And so I went down to Charlotte and I joined a healthcare system. At that time, they were called Carolina's Healthcare System. And it was an entity that was at 3 hospitals. I stayed there for 21 years, the last 11 as the chief information officer and the analytics officer. And that really is where I grew up professionally. I had a couple of really great mentors there. We went from 3 hospitals to 42 hospitals, all in the North Carolina and South Carolina. I learned how to develop new relationships, not only with business partners, so we could bring their applications and technologies to other facilities, because we had a combination of owned entities, leased entities, and managed entities. And so with all of that came some complexity, but also some opportunity to really kind of be more on the sales side, to be able to serve other organizations, provide a high value back to them. After that venture of 2 decades, I took a year off. I did some international work with a company, and then I wanted to come back into the CIO role permanent again and came out west. I went to SCL Health, which is the Sisters of Charity out of Leavenworth, Kansas. They had moved their headquarters to Denver. I was there the first year. Second year was the COVID year. Third year was negotiations about a merger. Then we did a merger with Intermountain Healthcare, and together we became Intermountain Health. And then I led the integration there for 2.5 years.
Wow. That is quite the resume, sir. What made you want to transition to that leadership role of CIO to get into that kind of like upper management field from where you were prior to that?
Yeah, that's a great point because it comes a point in your career. Do you want to stay a technologist or do you want to start leaning more toward the business side?
Exactly.
And I always kind of had a little lean toward the business side. Technology was fun. It was very predictable. It was things that, that you kind of were raised with or from you educated on. But really the business to me was the part that was exciting, to be able to develop new companies like we did at ProMedica, to provide services out to other entities like we did at Atrium Health, to go through mergers and acquisitions and really understand value of coming back out. So when you look at technology, technology only serves a purpose if it's able to change the goals and objectives and help realize the vision of a healthcare system. And so we're a servant organization. We provide servant leadership, and we're here to help others get better.
That's great. What would you say is some of the biggest challenges and setbacks that you faced with going through those?
Oh, there's there's a lot. There's a lot of learnings. The one thing that that I really kind of gravitated toward was really making sure in many of these situations that you kind of had a trusted partner or a mentor, somebody who could provide you some guidance, provide you some additional insight. Because many of the things you run into is the first time that they happen in your career. And you can try to do some kind of reckoning with it, but it's always nice to get other perspectives and other points of view, especially from people who have been through it. So there's a whole list of those. I mentioned one of them previously, like Dave Selman and Jim Mackey, then my CEO at Atrium Health, Michael Tarwater, and then Gene Woods. Just a tremendous amount of leaders that actually start to influence you. And then you get to Lydia Jumonville and Mark Harrison and Rob Allen. It's just really interesting because they all come with different perspectives of how they want you to manage, how they want you to lead.
Sure.
And the circumstances and situations are very unique. If I had to say what was kind of one of the biggest career, accomplishments that we went through, it really is, for me, it is growing leaders. It's becoming at some point in your career what I would call a professional parent, where you are really growing and developing people that will then become better than what you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you start to invest your time, your energy, and watch them grow and develop, and then move on into CIO roles or chief digital officer roles or CTO roles, you name it, it's really proud. It's kind of like being your own personal parent. For those of us that are fortunate to have children, you want your children to aspire and be better than what you are. And that's the same thing that happens professionally. At some point, you make that transition to say, hey, I've accomplished enough. I'm really here to grow and develop people. And that works all the way down to others within your area of responsibility. And for there, you kind of start looking at growing people's resumes, giving them more diversity in the work that they're doing, giving them opportunities to maybe create a different channel to move forward with. I have a great example. It actually brought tears to my eyes at the time that it happened. But last year, so several years ago, we had a field technician that served the executives at SCL Health. There was a lot more in him than what he was been able to deliver. So gave him some opportunities and moved him over in the cybersecurity area. He really grew and developed in cybersecurity. He ended up leaving and he went to the Department of Homeland Security.
Wow.
And so he provided the cyber services within DHS. And we went with a group of other field services people, took me out to lunch. So we went and had lunch. And as we were leaving, he goes running over to me and he says, hey, I want you to have this. And it's a medal. And he won Rookie of the Year for the Department of Homeland Security. And he wanted me to have that and said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And there was like, I can't take this. That's, that's too big. And he says, no. And he shoved it in my pocket. So I took it, I framed it, I have it in a cherry case. And he has a young son. So at some point, I will give that back to him for him to be able to give to his son as a memory of what his dad has accomplished. So you took somebody who was at a field services level. In a matter of years, they won Rookie of the Year in the federal government. Just amazing accomplishments by people by giving them the opportunity to succeed.
That is an amazing story. And I can't even imagine how that feels too. Not to see one person come from like one spot to where they were. I have a mentor in my own type of field. I mainly in the cybersecurity world. And we've jumped from different organizations where I started my career with them. And he was the one gentleman that took a chance on me. Now, me as a young buck in IT, I didn't really know exactly where to go, which is why I have a lot of passion into helping younger people, especially when they don't know where to go to IT to go. And this gentleman who stuck his neck out for me and took a chance on me and kind of, let me be who I am and grew into my own skill set of what I want to be. He then later moved to a different company while I still stayed the same. And we still kept in contact. And 10 years later, an opportunity arose for him, in which he gave me the opportunity. And I look up to him so much professionally and just as a leader. I just went to wherever like he goes. And it's me and another gentleman and us three that's kind of been amongst three other separate companies, similar to kind of how you rode path and going to different other and developing and bringing them back up. It's a very similar path.
Yeah.
And being my own self and starting to like, old young minds and be more of a leader and a teacher of technology is such a great feeling. And to see people excel, and just like you said, like building people's resumes and making people just like picking them up and going. That's a great story. I love it with the medal and everything like that. That's a huge honor, I bet, as well to have.
Starting to tear up a little bit right now.
Yeah, seriously, I'm in the same road. That's such a great honor. With your the title that you're in and your experiences that you have, it's definitely different from when we talk from a business perspective into like a general like technology skill set. And so there's a different skill set that you have when you get into that particular role. What skills would you say that you picked up over time or that you learned that helped you succeed in your transformation from being into a kind of leadership executive level role?
Yeah, I'll. That's a great question. I'm going to tackle that a couple of different ways. One is I think it's really important to network, to be able to develop, to look around and get in with a group of respected peers. And then many times they'll become your friends as well over time as you begin to share and really overcome challenges together. There's one group that I'm part of, and they always say, the answer is in the room. And it is. There's somebody who's already solved for something that you're looking to try to solve for. So trying to find that match and fit. So the larger you can create a trusted network, I think is really important to move forward. I also think in terms of relationships with partners. So partners to me, or some people call them vendors, they need to be part of your organization, part of your division that you have. It can't really be, a third party coming in. They need to be ingrained and to share that. And with that comes kind of a mutual respect. So if they call you, they send you an email, if they contact you, you have to respond back to them. No different than if you wanted them to respond back to you if you had a question. Yeah, you expect your partner to be very responsive. Well, it's a two-way street, and you've got to treat your partner as they're part of your professional family, because they really are. And they're actually bringing, in some cases, either services or solutions that you don't have that are helping to fill some gaps or accelerate maybe some work that's going into play. And the other thing I would say is when you start to look at, kind of what would be some of the values that you would have. I have a whole list of them, but truly when you start to work through what some of those values are, it really starts to look at having integrity is one that I like to really kind of put toward the top, to being open and honest and making sure that that there is a trusted environment for you to share information and for you to also receive information, to be that that trusted source and make sure that you respect, all aspects of those relationships. I also think with that comes trust. And so that's another thing that you put kind of in your back pocket. You got to create an environment that there is a level of trust between each other. And then empathy, I think, would be the third one I would put toward the top three is there's a lot of change that happens in technology. There's a lot of change that technology causes. The outcomes are always typically going to be positive, but it's a rough road at times for people to get used to new things. In some cases, they're changing somebody's job or maybe even replacing a job. So you've got to be able to move things through and not push it down, but really be able to understand how you can do this in a very thoughtful way to achieve the outcomes being expected, but also keeping the people in mind.
Very well said. Going empathy and then going back to the story of that gentleman, it takes a particular type and it takes a great leader in order to see somebody, we'll say struggling in this aspect, or maybe not leading up to his full potential of what he was doing, how you saw that one field tech gentleman that you have, and then to take him out of that role and to place him into a position where he would be a little bit more successful, and into nurturing that, into allowing them to be a success, really. And that I always kind of see that as kind of paying it forward a little bit as well. Because I'm sure there's a lot of struggles and a lot of things that you've seen throughout your vast career through different companies where maybe somebody didn't take that same opportunity with you, and where you definitely can and see that and like, well, if they just would have gave me this opportunity, or if they would have just gave me this, one chance or anything like that, I could have really made a difference. With that, kind of leading to my next question, is there any from the past, anything that you would change from your path for where you started in technology to where you started in healthcare to where you are today?
You know, when that kind of question, you kind of look at that in your personal life too, like, like
Absolutely.
what would you change? And you wouldn't be the person that you are if you didn't go through some of those challenges or tribulations and be able to overcome some of the opportunities that do come your way and be able to achieve and overachieve at times. And so I wouldn't change anything, or I wouldn't be the person that I am. However, if the same situation did come up, there are many different aspects that I would be more mature about, more seasoned, I guess is probably the best word, to look at different options and be able to maybe go down a different road or to modify what that road would be. And most of that has to do really not with the technology pieces, but it has to do with people. When you look at the business that we're in, it's people, process, and technology. And, I kind of like to go back at times to, Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And there's the one that's, I think, is number 5, that seek first to understand, then be understood. And sometimes when you're in a leadership role, you want to be very reactive. You want to, in some cases, take action quickly. And at times you have to. At times where there's a crisis or something serious is happening, you don't have time to be able to sit down and let's kind of confer about something. You have to start making some decisions to move forward. But there are other times where you actually do have the time, and it's really a bit important to sit down and listen to those that are around you, those that you serve, those that are outside of your organization, to be able to grasp how the different lenses are looking at maybe the same problem or different challenges. So that diversity of thought is so important. And so to take that time and to listen and to learn, and then maybe take a different path, or maybe even it's the same path, but go at a different pace. Those are all things that I think that, as you mature and as you get more seasoned in any type of leadership role, you start to realize not everything is a panic situation. You don't have to react right away. You actually can be a little more proactive and maybe respond versus react.
Great advice. I agree wholeheartedly. Respond versus react is a really good way of mentality to approach it. For the young listeners, for the people who are actually looking into getting into IT, do you have any advice as far as where to start? Whether it's some type of educational course, the route to go back that way, what would you be advice for a person who want to get into technology?
Yeah, if you know what area you want to get into, then be very focused in going into getting yourself. And in today's world, not everything requires, a bachelor's degree or trying to get some kind of advanced degree. Certificates are important. It gives you a nice framework and background. Usually it takes several months and it's not as expensive, but you start to become a lot more skilled and you start to be able to speak the language and understand a little bit more when you start having some of those conversations. And so, like, if you're into cybersecurity or you're into advanced intelligence or AI, or you're into analytics, to start to get some certifications as a foundation for you. And then you can start to look to see, are there some entry level or early level types of opportunities for you to join into? A lot of different places to look for that, but I think that's a piece that would may separate you from others who just have an interest but haven't taken any action, toward that interest. If you're not sure what area you want to get into, just ask some of your friends that are in the area, see if you can shadow them, be with them, or in your company that you're currently at, look to see if there's an opportunity to shadow and spend a day in a life with somebody who's a programmer or somebody who's a applications analyst and just kind of see what a day would look like. And would that be a day that you would like to have in your life and be able to experience some of that? When you look at organizations that are really into growing, develop, retaining people, which I would say large majority are, it's so much better to keep people with you for a longer period of time versus having to recruit people into your organization. But those opportunities can be there. So if you're excelling where you're at, doing really well, most time those opportunities would be there within your company. If you don't know what area, ask to bounce around over a period of months. Again, this is a journey and it's a career.
Mhm.
So don't think you have to jump into something tomorrow or next week or make a decision next month. Feel it out. Make sure it's the right decision for you. And then, if it's not in 3 years, 4 years, you've got to invest in order to get some kind of return back from you growing in that area. Then you can shift over into a different area if you want to explore. So, get yourself the certificates, get yourself so you know the language, you got some kind of a background to it. Then look within your company to see if there's opportunities for you to go ahead and shadow and be part of the IT organization and see then if there's opportunities to look at an early start in terms of a new job that would be potentially available. Most companies, most people like to mature and grow. When you look at your budget and you look at the things you have to do from a business perspective, not everybody can be a senior level person. You've got to have a different level. You got to have those that are intermediate. You got to have those that are just starting out. You got to have a level of senior people to teach and grow, the other people coming into the organization. You can't afford to have everybody at a senior level. And so you kind of do have that nice mix. And when those new opportunities arise to come in as a fresh start, early beginnings, go ahead and take advantage of that and jump on into it. But make the commitment. You have to make the commitment for, a good 3 years before you start to shift into something else.
Agreed. That's why when I talked to my career path, I was just general technology, support technology. And my goal was
Mhm.
ultimately to get into either game development or some type of computer programming, website design, something to those lines. And 10 plus years or so into my career, it kind of got a little mundane and just not
Mhm.
as exciting as it was. Other technologies that's come across that kind of made certain areas that were made it a little more obsolete with different new tools, like web design in particularly. So I dove into cybersecurity out of a whim. It seemed kind of
Mhm.
interesting. I enjoy the kind of forensic side of it, and it kind of piqued my interest. And so, yeah, 10 plus years, focusing my career mainly around support and just kind of like break fixes and kind of traditional IT to transition into this cybersecurity role. And I never looked back since. So there's a wonderful journey.
Congratulations. That's great. Yeah. And you got a lot of those technology roles that are really industry agnostic. Yeah. You can
Absolutely.
take that across, banking and finance or retail or healthcare. You can move some of those technology things all the way across other verticals because there's so much more opportunity out there.
Absolutely. Even podcasting as an opportunity.
Yeah.
That's true. Craig. So with everything throughout your career, you've seen a lot of trends come and go, I'm sure. What do you think in the next 2 or 3 years, or even 5, looking out, where technology is going to take us? And I will say you cannot use artificial intelligence because that's a freebie.
Well, if I had the crystal ball, then I would be able to show you what my investment strategy is, and you would know what I'm investing in and where I think things are going. I do think, though, that's probably something that has not come to flavor yet. I like to call it kind of advanced intelligence. There's going to be a lot more technology coming down the road, in my opinion. That's going to take a lot of computing power, and it's going to take a lot of good, fresh data in order to be able to start to accumulate and be able to bring new insights and new analytics and new intelligence into, any kind of industry that you're thinking of. So, for me, it's really kind of, let's look at making sure we have the computing power. Let's make sure that we have great data to be able to serve up into that space. And then the other side of that, and I can speak for healthcare, but when you look at it, you kind of see it all the way across a lot of other verticals, is the whole piece about experience. And I do think that part of the future is going to be able to make sure that our customers' experience is what will help differentiate us. So when you start looking at, kind of putting healthcare in your pocket, so it's on your phone, it's a wearable that you have. It's not something that forces me to go into a location, into a physician's practice, or even do a virtual visit, but is prompting me and giving me information and insights that allows me to be able to get through my day or get through my week or be able to achieve certain health outcomes that I'm looking for, whether I'm managing a certain chronic disease or I've got some episodic situation that I'm trying to take care of, and really kind of empower you to be able to do that. You see that in the retail, right? I mean, how many times do you have to go to a store? You don't have to go to a store at all anymore.
Right.
You can do it all from your home. You do it all from your pocket. You can do it at 3 a.m. You can do it in your car. It really doesn't matter where you're at. You can take that retail big. You can do the same thing with banking. And I think you'll see healthcare shifting a lot more toward that too. It has to be the reimbursement side and the finance side to be able to support that kind of transition. And I would hope that over the next, several years that we start seeing more of a focus on proactive care, on value-based care, and really the balance of the expense side of healthcare and the outcomes that we want to achieve. And a lot of that's going to come with getting the patient more engaged, more involved, and enhancing their experience.
I'm picturing a world where there's a lot of like robots and other things as well. It's kind of like and that type of scenario. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, a proponent of my Apple Watch that I wear probably 24/7, and I use it a lot for different, like health related things, so checking my heart rate and all that. So I definitely see that world coming.
Yep.
That's great. Well, Craig, we're coming up on time. Again, I appreciate you very much for taking the time to chat with us today, and it's much appreciated for joining. I thank you very much, sir.
Well, thank you as well. It was a great conversation.
Thank you, sir.